This is Third Paradigm, and I'm Teresa Carraggio. Today is Mother's Day. What better day to talk about abortion? When this was a hot button issue several years ago, I remember a number of ads that would have young people who said, if my mom had believed in abortion, I wouldn't be alive today. I thought there should be other ads of young people saying, if my mom hadn't believed in abortion, I wouldn't be alive today. Because every baby born at the wrong time is a baby that's not born at the right time. If during my 20s there had been criminalized abortion in every state for providers, I wouldn't have done any of the things I did. I wouldn't have come to California. I wouldn't have gone to graduate school. I wouldn't have had the career that allowed me to buy a house when the price was low enough that you could afford to raise a family on one income. I wouldn't have met my husband. We wouldn't have chosen to be breeders, not just have our share, but have 3 daughters and have a wealth of daughters in our lives. These are the things that were possible because in my 20s, I was able to make that choice. And I would have liked to see my daughters become those spokesperson who are saying, yes, here's a success story. I exist because abortion was not criminalized. And I couldn't say that while my parents were still alive. My parents were the chair people of the Right to Life Committee in their church. To them, they were single issue voters. There was nothing that was more important to them than the abortion issue. And for the right reasons. They felt that every baby was a gift from God and should be honored and treasured, and that we shouldn't worry so much, but we should allow things to unfold that would enable that child to reach its potential. And instead of thinking that we had to know how we were going to figure it all out. Now, I didn't agree with the definition of what a baby was in their terms, any time that there is a conception. But I do agree with their heart and with their intention and with their motive. And I'd like to see discussions happening more with that recognition that we are all a treasure. We are all here for a reason. And that these are just things that we can look at logistically. But that's not the topic of my talk today. Today, I want to talk about whether this Roe v. Wade Redux is a leak or is Squirrel. Look over there. Run over there. Quick. There's a cartoon out that has a person whose brain is opened and the Ukraine flag is being taken out and the Roe v. Wade is being put in. And before that, we saw COVID being trucked off the stage and Ukraine being trucked in. So I'm not the only one who thinks this is just a little suspicion. And I think that we'll have a better idea when we figure out whether any head rolls for the leak. If this was a planned leak, a planned distraction, we will never find out who actually leaked it, and there will be no repercussions. But if we are looking at this as something that they have done by design, we need to figure out how we're not going to fall for it. So that's what I'm going to be looking at, and I'm going to be looking at the principles of federalism and changing the debate from is abortion right or wrong to who should decide and at what level and for how many people. And I want to look at other issues along those lines like gay marriage and like pandemic response and internet censorship. Let's do this. This came up on my radar because I was reading Caitlin Johnstone's Substack, and in a couple of lines she mentioned the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court leak. One commenter said, well, I think that Glenn Greenwald has a point. Glenn, of course, is a constitutional lawyer. His article, The Irrational, Misguided Discourse on Roe v. Wade and Other Constitutional Controversies, looks at how the Constitution intentionally protected the minority from majoritarian rule. And he says that the Bill of Rights was written for this purpose and that the Supreme Court was put in for this very reason. Now, in my book, I go into a lot of detail about why I think the Constitution was not written to protect the majority or the minority, and that we should always distinguish between the Bill of Rights and the Constitution because they were written by people who were on opposite sides. That those who wrote the Constitution wanted a consolidated, centralized, powerful government that would usurp the rights of the states. The Bill of Rights was written by the so-called anti-federalists who were for the Articles of Confederation. And so they were opposed and ended up losing because of tricks like calling them anti-federalists when they were the ones who wanted a truly federal government. One of the things that Glenn mentions in here as irrational is that people will use a Lincoln quote to say that Roe v. Wade has to be held up. And that quote is, if the policy of the government upon vital questions affecting the whole people is to be irrevocably fixed by decisions of the Supreme Court, the people will have ceased to be their own rulers. This is something that he says is very much against Roe v. Wade. In response to the commenter who cited Glenn's article, someone else put in an impassioned defense of abortion rights, and then someone else said, this is just like gay marriage. And then I jumped into the fray saying that I think that maybe this is a red herring and that I wouldn't be surprised to have some future leak about gay marriage. And that set off two independent discussions with people that got very hostile to the point where I said, look, see how successful this is. We agree on these issues, and it doesn't matter anyway because we don't have a voice in it. And these things haven't even happened yet. But already we're fighting. So I think we need to look at what the real issues are and how we're treating each other and whether we're rising to the bait. As an aside, one of my viewers, E. Pierce, has been sending links that are giving me a real education in things like postmodernism and the Robert Keegan's levels 3, 4, 5 of pre-rationalism, rationalism, and meta-rationalism. So I don't understand all of that, but I want to declare myself a postmodernism dropout. I am really stuck in rationalism, and I think you should be too, because in the end, logic will take you where intuition does not dare to tread. Any argument that you make has to be based on logic. Logic is the only thing we have to be able to push back against authority. So I consider myself the Mr. Spock of things like spirituality, metaphysics, economics, geopolitics. All of these come down to, is it logical? Logic is ethics. Consistency is ethics. So whatever we're looking at, we have to make sure that we're being consistent in applying the same thing to other people that we would want applied to ourselves. So how does logic make me such an incendiary presence on these comments boards? Because if you say that an unelected board of judges can decide what's right for 350 million people, you also have to be okay with it if they decide that's wrong. So if they decide that abortion should be legal, then you need to also accept it if that same group decides it shouldn't be. If they decide that gay marriage shouldn't be legal anywhere, that's the same right that you've given them when you said that they could say that it is legal everywhere and that the states have no choice in that. And I think the same things could be applied in terms of pandemic response. If the federal government has the right to be able to say this is the way that everyone must respond, then they've taken away the will of the people. And the same thing for internet censorship. So I believe that the way that we should be looking at this isn't by asking the question of, are these things right or wrong? Which side are we on? But saying, at what level should these be decided and for how many people? To address these questions, I think we need to go back to the definition of lowercase federalism that I use in my book, which is a negotiating body between sovereign entities. And what's the right size for those entities? At the time the Constitution was written, the average size of a state was 200,000 people, which is about the size of a county today. If these are questions that can be decided at the county level, then you are protected against majority rule by the right of secession. You, if you want to, can join with another group. You also can hop a border. So these are things that would allow people to have their will and make decisions without overruling the rights of individuals. When the European Union was formed, the definition of federalism that was used was that decisions should always be pushed down to the lowest level possible, so the people that they actually affect. In that case, I'm not sure men should be voting at all on abortion rights. And I'm not sure anyone who isn't gay should be voting on gay marriage. If we agree that the federal government or the Supreme Court has the right to make decisions for individuals, bypassing the states, bypassing the counties, then we've agreed that they have that right in all other things. And in the same way that censorship was something that Democrats liked when it was censoring things that they didn't want around, like Trump, and then it can be used against them. And propaganda is something that they learn to love, but then it can be used in the other direction. On that same thread, a woman wrote, "Abortion is no solution when women see no option other than abortion. A just society is one in which a woman has a real choice based on her needs, and that abortion or no abortion are two sides of the same capitalist coin." That's what I want, as counties to take back our power over economics so that we do have real choices, not just for abortion, but choices like my parents wanted, to welcome every child into the world with security and knowing that it is welcomed and loved. If you want to go deeper into whether our love is being used to turn us against each other, here's Is Our Love Being Pimped for Profit on Jocko Willink, and here's the reality puzzle and the propaganda playbook. Thank you, and please subscribe and check out my Substack, which has links and text. Thank you.